Most people believe control is something you assert outward. They imagine pressure, presence, dominance, authority. They believe it is applied, enforced, demonstrated. That belief already places them at a disadvantage, because anything that must be demonstrated can be measured, challenged, and eventually resisted. Power that can be seen can be opposed. Power that cannot be predicted cannot. Machiavelli would have chosen to begin here, because he understood that men are not governed by strength as much as they are governed by expectation. People do not react to who you are. They react to who they think you are about to be. Their behavior is always one step ahead, preparing for a response they believe is coming. When that response fails to arrive, the system they rely on begins to break. The first thing to understand is that most human interaction is not conscious. People are not deciding how to treat you in real time. They are running scripts built from repetition, from past experience, from how others behave. You are placed into a category almost immediately: cooperative, defensive, passive, competitive. Each category comes with an expected range of reactions. Those expectations create comfort. Comfort creates confidence. Confidence creates control. When you behave exactly as expected, people feel safe around you. Safe does not mean respected. It means manageable. This is where control quietly transfers away from you without conflict. The moment someone feels they know how you will respond, they stop adjusting themselves. They push slightly. They speak a little more freely. They take small liberties, not because they dislike you, but because your predictability lowers perceived risk. Machiavelli mentioned that men are quicker to offend those who make themselves easy to read than those who remain difficult to interpret. Readability is convenience. Convenience invites use. The first behavior that destabilizes control is selective inconsistency. This is not chaos. It is not moodiness. It is not being unreliable. It is precision in where you remain consistent and where you do not. Most people assume consistency is virtue. In reality, consistency is only valuable when it benefits you. When others rely on your consistency to manage their behavior, it becomes leverage against you. People notice patterns faster than they admit. The speed at which you respond, the tone you use when challenged, how long it takes before you give ground. These patterns form an internal map. Once the map is built, interaction becomes easy for them and costly for you. Selective inconsistency breaks the map. You respond quickly one time and slowly the next. You agree immediately in one context and hesitate in another similar one. Not randomly, intentionally. This forces the other person to stop relying on habit and start paying attention. Attention is effort. Effort creates friction. Friction reduces control. They begin watching you instead of moving through you. At first, this feels subtle. They may not even consciously notice it. They simply feel less fluid, less confident. The interaction does not glide the way it used to. Something feels off. That feeling is uncertainty forming. Uncertainty makes people cautious. The second behavior deepens this effect by denying emotional symmetry. Humans regulate themselves through mirroring. Calm seeks calm. Excitement seeks excitement. Tension seeks reassurance. When the emotional exchange matches expectation, the nervous system relaxes. When it does not, it alerts. You do not remove emotion, you invert it. When someone approaches you with urgency, you respond with ease. When they approach casually, you respond with gravity. When they attempt humor to lower stakes, you maintain seriousness. When they attempt seriousness to assert pressure, you soften. This inversion forces the other person to self-regulate. They cannot lean on you to stabilize the interaction. Their internal state becomes visible to them. That visibility is uncomfortable. Machiavelli would have recognized this immediately. He understood that the most destabilizing position is not opposition, but refusal to play the expected role. Opposition invites escalation. Role refusal creates confusion. Confusion shifts control. As these first two behaviors integrate, something important happens. People begin testing you more deliberately, not aggressively, carefully. They are trying to rebuild the map they lost. Each test is an attempt to regain predictive control. This is where the third behavior matters: partial engagement. Most people respond fully or not at all. They commit or they refuse. Both outcomes close the loop. Closure restores comfort. Partial engagement keeps the loop open. You acknowledge without concluding. You respond without resolving. You give just enough to keep the interaction alive without giving enough to end it. This creates tension without conflict. People who rely on momentum become impatient here. They push harder. People who rely on subtlety become more obvious. Either way, the mask slips. You gain information without giving ground. Machiavelli mentioned that men reveal themselves more through impatience than through speech. When you slow the exchange without stopping it, impatience surfaces. The fourth behavior introduces a deeper layer of destabilization. Intentional misalignment. Most people rush to correct assumptions. They want to be understood. They want clarity. They want to control perception. In doing so, they give away leverage. When you immediately correct how others see you, you help them position you accurately. Accuracy benefits them more than it benefits you. Intentional misalignment means allowing small inaccuracies to remain, not lies, not harmful distortions, minor misunderstandings about your priorities, your availability, your interest level, your tolerance. These inaccuracies cause people to behave more honestly around you. They test more freely. They assume more. They reveal how they would treat you if they believed the story they are telling themselves. Machiavelli would have chosen to be underestimated rather than perfectly known. Underestimation lowers defense. As this behavior settles, people begin exposing their default modes. The ones who only behave well under perceived authority loosen. The ones who rely on charm overreach. The ones who depend on pressure escalate too early. You see them clearly because you did not correct their assumptions fast enough to protect them from themselves. At this point, control has not fully shifted yet, but it has become unstable. The fifth behavior is what turns instability into caution. Delayed consequence. Most people either react immediately or never react at all. Immediate reaction teaches others where the line is. No reaction teaches them there is no line. Delayed consequence teaches them something far more unsettling, that the line exists, but its location is unknown. You allow behavior to repeat just enough to confirm pattern, not long enough to normalize. Then you respond once, cleanly, without emotional charge, without explanation. The contrast is what shocks the nervous system. They replay the past interactions, trying to locate the moment they crossed the line. They cannot find it. The line was not where they thought it was. That realization creates internal recalibration. They slow down. They second-guess. They hesitate before acting. Hesitation is the visible sign of lost control. Machiavelli mentioned that men fear unpredictable punishment more than predictable discipline. Predictable discipline can be gamed. Unpredictable consequence cannot. As these behaviors accumulate, interactions begin to feel different. Not dramatic, slightly heavier. Conversations pause where they used to flow. People choose words more carefully. They test less casually. They begin asking instead of assuming. You have not asserted authority. You have removed their ability to predict. This is the midpoint shift. The listener begins to realize that something has already changed, not because they decided to change, but because others are responding differently. The environment is adjusting, and this is where most people make a mistake. They notice the shift and try to stabilize it. They explain, they reassure, they smooth. They attempt to return the interaction to comfort. That impulse must be resisted. Stability benefits those who were comfortable before. You are not seeking stability. You are allowing reorganization. The sixth behavior emerges naturally at this stage. Denying narrative closure. People want explanations, stories, reasons. They want to know why something feels different, why access changed, why your behavior no longer fits the old pattern. When you provide narrative closure, you give them a handle, a way to file the experience. Filing restores control. You do not deny facts. You deny framing. You do not explain why you delayed, why you changed tone, why you responded differently. You let the story remain unfinished. Unfinished stories occupy attention. Attention creates imbalance. Imbalance favors the one who is not seeking resolution. Machiavelli understood that men would rather accept a painful certainty than live with unresolved ambiguity. By refusing to resolve it for them, you force adaptation. At this stage, some people disengage. They sense increased cost. Others lean in more carefully. Both responses confirm the shift. You are no longer operating inside their script. Once narrative closure is denied, people begin to adjust internally. Not consciously, their nervous system recalibrates first. They speak more slowly. They choose words more carefully. They begin watching you instead of moving through you. This is the point where most people misinterpret what is happening. They think respect has arrived. It has not. What has arrived is caution. Caution is far more valuable. Machiavelli would have preferred caution to admiration every time, because admiration fades when incentives change. Caution stays as long as uncertainty remains. The seventh behavior consolidates this shift. Controlled contradiction. This is where predictability truly collapses. You contradict yourself occasionally, but never on principles, never on values. Only on logistics, timing, availability, preferences. One day, you decline something you would normally accept. Another day, you accept something similar without explanation. People try to connect these decisions. They fail. There is no pattern to extract because the pattern is selective. This does something subtle to the observer. They stop assuming continuity. They stop projecting past behavior into future expectations. Every interaction becomes its own event. This increases perceived cost. They cannot automate their approach with you anymore. Automation is comfort. Comfort breeds entitlement. By removing automation, you remove entitlement without confrontation. Machiavelli mentioned that men feel most secure when the future resembles the past. When resemblance disappears, so does confidence. Confidence is the fuel of manipulation. Without it, tactics feel risky. At this stage, people either simplify their behavior around you or withdraw entirely. Both outcomes indicate loss of control. Those who simplify speak plainly. They ask directly. They stop probing. Those who withdraw do so quietly. They sense the field is no longer favorable. You do not pursue either group. Pursuit would re-establish balance. The eighth behavior sharpens this imbalance further. Presence without accessibility. You are visible. You respond. You acknowledge. But access does not follow presence. You do not extend conversations. You do not deepen unnecessarily. You do not offer additional entry points. Interaction has edges now. This frustrates those who rely on gradual encroachment. Manipulation rarely begins with demands. It begins with closeness, with familiarity, with emotional overlap. When overlap is denied, leverage cannot form. Machiavelli would have chosen to be seen, but not held. Held implies possession. Possession implies control. People begin to feel that interacting with you requires intention. Casual approaches fail. Lazy assumptions fall flat. They either show up cleanly or not at all. This is where reputation begins to shift. Not reputation as in gossip or image, but reputation as in felt experience. People talk less about what you are like and more about how interactions with you feel. Measured, uncertain, slightly tense, not hostile, just not loose. Loose environments are where exploitation thrives. The ninth behavior completes the system: refusal to stabilize others. This is not emotional coldness, it is responsibility realignment. Most people unconsciously regulate the emotional states of others. They smooth discomfort. They reassure insecurity. They soften disappointment. This keeps interactions flowing, but it also makes you responsible for outcomes that are not yours. When you stop stabilizing others, something uncomfortable happens. People feel their own reactions more clearly. Anxiety has nowhere to go. Frustration has no outlet. Disappointment cannot be outsourced. They attempt to hand it back to you through tone, through implication, through pressure. You do not take it. Machiavelli would have recognized this as the final severing of emotional leverage. When someone cannot offload their internal state onto you, their influence collapses. They either regulate themselves or disengage. Both outcomes favor you. At this point, control has already shifted, not dramatically, structurally. You notice it in small things. People wait for your response instead of pushing. They phrase requests instead of assumptions. They hesitate before crossing lines they used to ignore. Some stop testing entirely. You did not confront them. You did not warn them. You did not explain the change. You let the environment teach them. This is where many people make a second mistake. They feel the shift and attempt to lock it in by becoming rigid, over-controlled, distant, performatively serious. That breaks the system. Rigidity is predictable. Predictability is what you removed. Instead, You remain flexible within structure. You allow movement without access, expression without attachment, engagement without commitment. This keeps the field dynamic and unreadable. Machiavelli understood that the strongest position is one that does not need reinforcement. The moment you try to protect power, you reveal fear of losing it. You do not protect this position, you occupy it. As time passes, emotional reactions begin to feel inefficient. Not wrong, inefficient. They provide too much information. They reveal timing. They reveal thresholds. They reveal priorities. You still feel them, but you no longer act from them. Action is delayed until clarity arrives. Clarity now arrives faster because there is less noise. People around you feel this before they articulate it. Interactions shorten. Tension resolves itself without discussion. Conflicts dissolve before forming because the cost of testing you feels unclear. This is not intimidation. It is respect emerging from uncertainty. You begin to see how often people rely on emotional feedback to guide behavior. When that feedback disappears, they feel exposed. They either adapt or retreat. You do not take retreat personally. Personalization would pull you back into regulation. You let space do the sorting. Eventually, something settles. Not peace, not detachment, alignment. Your behavior no longer reacts to the room. The room reacts to the structure you bring. You do not dominate conversations. You shape their boundaries. This is active control without effort. Machiavelli would have approved of this outcome because it requires no maintenance. It does not depend on fear or affection. It depends on uncertainty and consequence. You are not mysterious. Mystery invites curiosity. Curiosity invites intrusion. You are simply difficult to map. Difficult to map means difficult to manage. People lose control not because you overpower them, but because the shortcuts they relied on no longer function. They cannot anticipate. They cannot escalate safely. They cannot extract casually. They adjust or they leave, and you do not follow either movement. By the end, there is no sense of victory, no sense of conquest, just a noticeable shift in gravity. Interactions feel heavier, cleaner, less emotional, more deliberate. You are not calmer, you are denser. Emotional reactions now feel primitive, not because you suppress them, but because they offer so little advantage. They belong to a version of you that needed to be seen, understood, stabilized. That version no longer runs the system. The control did not move loudly. It did not announce itself. It simply changed hands when expectation collapsed and was never rebuilt. And nothing needs to be said about it. By now, the shift is no longer subtle to the people around you. They may not articulate it, but they feel it. Interactions that once felt casual now require attention. Exchanges that once relied on momentum now stall if intention is unclear. This is the phase where control does not just slip, it is challenged. When people realize they no longer have predictive access to you, they do not immediately surrender. Most attempt to reclaim control, not openly, quietly, strategically. This is where the real test begins. Machiavelli would have expected this response. He understood that men tolerate loss poorly, especially loss that happens without explanation. When control fades gradually, the instinct is not acceptance, it is recovery. The first recovery attempt is familiarity. People act as if nothing has changed. Old jokes, old assumptions, old tones. They test whether the previous script still runs. This is not innocence, it is calibration. They are checking if the shift was temporary. You do not correct them. Correction would acknowledge the old frame. You respond as you are now, clean, measured, slightly offset from expectation. The test fails quietly. They feel it. The second attempt is pressure disguised as concern, questions framed as care, comments framed as curiosity. Are you okay? You seem different. Is something wrong? These are not questions seeking answers. They are probes. They are attempts to pull you back into explanation. Explanation would restore predictability. You do not refuse. You do not reassure. You acknowledge without elaboration. The probe lands and finds no leverage. That unsettles them more than resistance would. Machiavelli would have noted that men rely on emotional hooks when authority is absent. When the hook fails, they escalate. The third attempt is subtle punishment. Withdrawal, coolness, delay, reduced enthusiasm. This is meant to trigger your old instinct to repair, to re-engage, to restore harmony. The punishment only works if you value the approval it removes. You let the distance exist. Distance is not rejection, it is information. Those who withdraw reveal dependence on ease. Those who remain but adjust reveal capacity for respect. The field continues to sort itself without your intervention. At this stage, some people change tactics entirely. They attempt to regain control socially. They speak around you instead of to you. They frame narratives. They test how others respond to you now. This is not hostility. It is reconnaissance. Machiavelli warned that reputation is shaped indirectly. Men watch how others treat you to decide how they should. When your behavior becomes difficult to interpret, the group looks for signals. You do not manage this process. Management would be effort. Effort would reveal concern. You remain consistent in one way only. You do not chase alignment. Over time, something interesting happens. The people who attempt to reclaim control grow tired, not angry, fatigued. Control requires energy. Manipulation requires feedback. When feedback does not arrive, effort feels wasted. This is behavioral fatigue. They stop trying to figure you out because the return is unclear. They either simplify their behavior or disengage. Simplification looks like respect. Disengagement looks like indifference. Both outcomes remove pressure from your system. This is when the environment truly reorganizes. Conversations around you change tone. People stop performing. They stop testing. They become more direct or more distant. The ambiguity you introduced has forced a decision. Machiavelli would have seen this as the moment power consolidates, not through dominance, but through exhaustion. When others stop competing for control, the one who remains steady inherits it by default. Now consider what this feels like internally. There is no thrill here, no sense of triumph. If anything, there is a strange neutrality. Emotional spikes feel unnecessary. Dramatic responses feel inefficient. You begin to notice how much energy others spend trying to manage perception, timing, reaction. You do not feel superior. You feel unburdened. At this point, the final behavior becomes visible not as an action, but as a condition. You no longer rush to stabilize outcomes. When tension appears, you let it exist. When disagreement surfaces, you do not hurry toward resolution. When someone is uncomfortable, you do not move to fix it. This does not create chaos. It creates accountability. People are forced to sit with their own reactions. They cannot outsource emotional regulation to you. This changes how they approach you permanently. Machiavelli would have chosen this condition over any outward show of authority. Authority demands maintenance. This does not. Over time, people learn something about you that they never fully articulate. That engaging with you requires intention. That casual manipulation fails. That emotional shortcuts do not work. This knowledge spreads quietly. You see it in small things. Fewer interruptions, cleaner requests, longer pauses before people speak, more listening, less assumption. The room has adjusted. This is where many people make a final mistake. They notice the adjustment and attempt to capitalize on it. They lean into it. They assert. They harden. They try to dominate. That collapses everything. Dominance invites opposition. Opposition restores engagement. Engagement restores control. You do none of this. You remain exactly as you are, flexible, unreadable, calm without being withdrawn, present without being available. This is not passivity. It is structural control. By now, emotional reactions feel like relics. They still arise, but they no longer feel aligned with your goals. They give away too much. They move too fast. They collapse leverage. You do not suppress them. You simply do not elevate them to action.